The journalist in me completely refused to let go of the recently concluded by-elections. I was still digging around for information. And as you know, maybe some of you know, our profession is one I'd call, especially investigative journalism, the profession of dead ends. Because most of the time, that is exactly where you end up when you're looking for information. Remember, these are politicians. They're experts at hiding information, hiding their true feelings, hiding what they're really doing. These are the people we're dealing with every day. But finally, I got a break. But the problem with that break is that I did not have a second independent source to confirm this information. You know our policy on this channel. And then, pop, from nowhere, this morning, that second source to confirm, second independent source to confirm this information, I came across him. One of the candidates in Kasipul, Bwana Philip Aroko Otete, is a very well-known businessman, very controversial. Some of us will remember that after the assassination of the immediate previous member of parliament of Kasipul, he was arrested and he remained in custody for almost 3 weeks. But I listened very carefully to his interview on the Obina show, and I got my second source confirmation. Crazy information. I'm going to share it with you right here on this channel in this particular video. That is something to really look forward to. Trust me. And then there is the very dramatic return of the provincial administration. Tyrant chiefs who rule our villages with an iron hand. Oh yes, they're back with a bang. Because President Ruto recently hosted, wait for this one, 15,000 chiefs from all over the country. Okay, and that was a very interesting meeting. These people have been empowered. They have been given instructions. And on my show today, I will reveal why that is very bad news for long-suffering Kenyans. Okay, I know younger Kenyans will have no idea what provincial administration really is, and therefore may not be capable of analyzing the impact of this developing story. Karibuni sana to my packed show today, and make sure you enjoy. Twende kazi. Let us start with this provincial administration monster. Chiefs. It is super fascinating that when we were removing Kanu and Moi from power, the clarion call, top on the list of the campaign promises of the Rainbow Coalition, and especially Moi Kibaki, was that they were going to get rid of the provincial administration. And whenever they said that, people were happy and people looked forward to it. Especially because during the Kanu era, one of the very unpopular things chiefs in the village used to do is that if there's a fundraiser, they would visit every homestead and demand a donation by force. And if you're not able to produce the money, they would take those few chickens you have in your homestead. A very poor Kenyan family has only that in the homestead, and you could be sure that from those few chickens, at least a few, at least one, will end up on the dinner table of this tyrant chief. So Kenyans hated them. And this was just one of the reasons why Kenyans hated them. They were the government arm in the village, very draconian, implementing instructions from above, but also adding their own instructions to make life unbearable in the village, and also to ensure that in case you got a problem in the village, you could easily find yourself in more problems than the person or people causing you that very problem. I'll give you a personal account very shortly. Now, the reason for the return of the provincial administration is very clear. Ruto is preparing for 2027. And these chiefs, who are in every tiny village in the Republic of Kenya, are going to be used for the UDA, or rather the Ruto campaign. I don't think he's going to vie on that party. They're going to be used for the Ruto campaign countrywide. And of course, that may include these manenos of pap, you're duly elected, and yet you don't have votes. I'm sure you understand. I have seen somebody arguing that even if chiefs are returned with a vengeance into our villages, they'll find a very different environment, because Kenyans are very, very aware of their rights. Kenyans these days are very educated. These are not the old days when the chief comes and gives instructions and nobody is thinking of anything except following those instructions to the letter. However, I don't agree with that point of view. Chiefs are still capable of causing a lot of havoc and misery in our villages. Let me explain. And let us start with the most obvious. The current government has shown us that they have no issues using government machinery paid for by taxpayers to campaign. It's a very wrong thing to do. But they have shown us very clearly they have no qualms with that. Okay? So you imagine a chief in this area which is opposition. Do you think, or don't you think, that is going to be used as much as possible to frustrate the opposition? Even if the opposition are in office, even if the governor is opposition, there are many things a chief can do to frustrate even a governor of a county. Okay? I am sure we'll all grasp this a lot better if I give you a brief summary of the history of provincial administration. Provincial administration, at least in the country called Kenya, was enforced and built at around the same time that a brand new tax was introduced into the country called the hat tax. We are talking early 1900s. Although the Mzungu at that time was already stealing our assets and resources, they were eager to increase their profits by generating some income within their areas of jurisdiction. Actually, hat tax was introduced in many, many countries all over Africa. And of course, the other very major objective of introducing this tax was to force the natives into the economy of the Mzungu, so that they abandon their ancient way of life, how the community had lived and survived for decades and decades. They wanted to change that and force Africans into the labor market. Simple logic. How do you pay tax if you don't have money? Get a job. Go and work on a Mzungu farm. Get some money so that you're able to pay the tax. Because the hat tax was mandatory and it was charged on each and every hat in a homestead. In my opinion, the independence of African countries would have been delayed even for 100 years had the Mzungu not introduced this hat tax manenos. And I don't know if our current leaders care to look at history, care to read history, because they would know their policies on taxes can only end in one way. It can only end with them being shown the door. History clearly shows us the mighty Mzungus were shown the door. Why? Because of taxes. Sasa wewe unafikiri wewe ni nani? Can you reverse history? Can you twist the dynamics of politics since time immemorial? Wacha tuone. And so you can imagine this chief in a remote village, receiving instructions from above, from the Mzungus. A certain homestead has stubbornly refused to pay taxes. Go and deal with them. I'm sure you can imagine that. And then at independence, provincial administration was retained. It was the only way for government to govern in Kenya and many other African countries. And African presidents found out very quickly, and this is very important to note, that provincial administration was very useful in dealing with errant politicians and any opposition, in case there was still opposition politics in that particular country. And it was very effective. Just imagine a political party based in Nairobi, and there is a problem in Elwak. How would they handle it? Well, with provincial administration, the instructions are there in a flash, and things are happening, while the party is still confused and figuring out what to do next. So you can see there's no competition. Easy win for the evil government. And so after the campaigns to remove Kanu, where Kibaki and the opposition told us, swore to us, that provincial administration, kwisha maneno, immediately after those elections, and immediately after Kibaki was safely inside State House, mambo yalibadilika. Provincial administration was not only retained, it was improved on. You see, at the beginning of the Kibaki administration, they did not take provincial administration so seriously. But when they started receiving advice from retired President Moi, they changed their approach, and suddenly the Kibaki government became stable. And so without blaming Kibaki too much, the issue here, according to me, is that nobody could find something to replace this thing. And remember, that was the time before the new constitution. Okay? Because with the new constitution, there is no need for provincial administration. No need. In fact, in my opinion, it contradicts our constitution. For the simple reason, we have only two levels of government, national government and county government. Period. Hakuna ingine. And therefore the county government should be able to manage the villages within their jurisdictions. Find a way to do that, without government involvement. And very, very important to note, even if they used chiefs, the whole game would change. Because this chief is answerable to a government which is on the ground. A government villagers can complain to of excesses immediately. They can easily reach that government. As opposed to a government sitting in Nairobi. Okay, I'm sure you get it. Allow me to tell you a brief personal story that will definitely illustrate the fact that even now, chiefs are going to cause ordinary Kenyans a lot of problems. Mashinani, in the villages. After my political lecturer passed on, after the funeral, I came across some information which was very disturbing. To cut a long, painful story short, it became clear that there was a possibility that he was murdered. He did not die of natural causes. And one of the reasons why this information could not go away, it disturbed me so much, is because it supported the facts on the ground. My political lecturer at the time was in his early 70s. A very healthy man. He went to the shamba every day. And because he worked so hard on his shambas, he was even in better condition than when he was working, sitting on a desk. Now the chief at that time had acted very friendly to me on several occasions. And so I decided to go and share the information with him. Oh, terrible mistake. Nilijua nilikuwa sijui. Hey! He not only contacted the suspects immediately, But I am persuaded he also received some money for the information he gave them. And that was the end of that matter. Yeah, and it was very disheartening for me, because I kept on meeting villagers who would pull me aside and ask me, what is wrong with you? This thing of your father was not normal. I thought you were educated, not like us here in the village. I thought you could do something about it. I really received it over the years. But as we have said on this channel many times, because many of us on this channel ignore the spiritual, yeah, there is no way you can play around with innocent blood and get away with it. There is no way. It is not possible. There is no magician who is alive or who was ever alive who is able to shut up, yeah, the voice of people's blood crying from the ground to Almighty God. Hakuna. And so, 14 years later, yeah, he passed on in 2011, January 19th, the chickens have come home to roost. I am so far away from my shags right now, but almost every other week, I receive new information from the ground. This is actually what happened. So and so was involved, and I get so shocked. Even so and so, to Brutus, then die Caesar. Allow me to leave it there, yeah, because this is a developing story, okay? Please, I'm sorry if I've left you in suspense, but I just wanted to illustrate the fact that there are some things in this world that are impossible, and you have to understand the spiritual to understand why they are impossible. Yeah, and therefore don't try them. Yeah, this information can save you a lot of trouble. Don't. Just do something that will stand the test of time. Always try your best to do that. You will not always be successful, but at least if every time you stop yourself, yeah, before you do something silly, and you ask yourself, this thing I'm doing, will it stand the test of time? Sometimes it could help you. It could persuade you to take a different path. Okay? Actually, if I'd been thinking straight at the time, and if I didn't trust people too much, many of them I hardly knew them, then I would not have gone to the chief in the first place. Because there is another incident which had happened early. Yeah? He had very quickly issued a burial permit without following the usual procedures. Yeah? And those who wanted to get this burial permit had used me. They asked me to accompany them to the chief's place. Yeah? And I innocently accepted. Kumbe, I was part of the deal to hurriedly issue a burial permit under circumstances that I can only call criminal. Okay? But let's just leave that story for now. My point is this. That is a chief for you. Yeah, that is a chief in the village. Actually, what we need in the villages are not chiefs. We need DCI officers in the village. That will help the villagers much more than a chief to lord over them and to campaign for the government to win an election, which they can never win. Oh yes. My definition of a chief in Kenya, yeah, and this may be a little harsh, but I believe it is the reality. This is a greedy village tyrant who is usually not so clever. Okay? That is my definition. And that spells trouble for long-suffering Kenyans. Right, let's move on to the topic you have all been waiting for. Yeah, the information I came across. Actually, the most shocking thing in this information is that the ODM party did not win the Kasipul seat. They didn't win. That seat was actually won by somebody else, an independent candidate. Okay? Now, while you absorb that shock, let me give you the information I came across. I was informed that what happened in the recent by-elections was a last-minute decision. Okay? What I can also call a Kibaki. You know, in the fateful 2007 general elections, everything was allowed to move on as usual, normally. Okay? And then, when Kibaki people realized we were losing this by a landslide, they intervened last minute. And that meant the minute-by-minute tally, which NTV had gone into a lot of trouble and expense to organize countrywide, yeah, they were beaming the results, was very, very suddenly stopped. The plug was pulled out, stopped, and then there was silence. And then, of course, you know what happened shortly after. Some very strange, mysterious results were announced, giving Kibaki a win by a mere 200,000 votes. Okay? Which suggests that the powers that be in Kenya were under some illusion that they had done enough to win most of those by-elections. But then at the 11th hour they realized they were losing by a landslide, and therefore they intervened. Directives were given from somewhere. All those seats must be won by ODM and UDA. Wapende, wasipende. And so in Kasipul, the loser was announced the winner. That is what happened. Now I know most of us will have heard that there is a very spirited effort at the moment to purge party members who went against the party position in the recent by-elections. There is even a deputy governor of Homa Bay who is on the chopping block, and chances are very high that he's going to be impeached. Now, let us use simple logic. Already, you have gone against the will of the people. And then now you want to punish the people who are defending the will of the people. The people are supporting candidates that the people were supporting. How do you think that is going to end? It is going to definitely alienate your parties more and more from the people. It is a fatal mistake, in my opinion. As fatal as the mistake that was made to impeach Gachagua. I don't know if most of us remember that when Rigathi Gachagua was deputy president, he was a joke. Nobody took him seriously. Definitely did not have any support. But what happened after he was impeached? He became a national hero. And so what ODM and UDA are preparing themselves to do is to create many, many heroes across the country, yeah, by purging party members, by punishing them for exercising their democratic right. Yeah, it's a bit messy, yes, I know, because you're supposed to support your party. But the best decision, they should just have left it alone. I don't understand that decision. Anyway, consequences loading, for sure. Yeah, and if you doubt, just review old videos of when Gachagua was the deputy president. Not only was he a nobody, he was the joke of the century. Yeah, with those funny suits of his. Yeah, he didn't make sense. Funny utterances. I am aware most of us have forgotten. Okay? But of course after he was impeached, mambo yalibadilika tena sana. Now we have come to that season where we have a tradition on this channel where you good people normally gift yours truly. Yeah, and these donations have been a great help in building up this channel to what it is today, a very trusted source of information. You know, I was recently very humbled when somebody told me, Chris, these things you used to tell us 2 years ago and which looked very far-fetched are happening right now, right before our eyes. How did you know? And by the way, that happens all the time. And the truth is, most of that credit must go to those people who support this channel with such donations, yeah, which enable me to do a few things that put me in a position to give you that kind of analysis that stands the test of time. It is not very easy. Very many people greatly underestimate the costs involved. And I understand, yeah, I guess it is because many YouTubers just go before a camera and speak their mind and leave it at that. Obviously, that doesn't cost much. Anyway, mine was just to give you a heads up that we have entered that season yet again. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart in advance for all you're going to do. Asanteni sana sana. I have put details on the screen for those who want to move immediately. Asanteni sana. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.